Oh no. Hello. Welcome tonight. We are gonna take a dive into Jonestown, and but first we're gonna start back in Indianapolis, back when Jim Jones first started and put together the church. Um, we have a special guest joining us, and I will let him introduce himself once we're to that point. But first, I do want to say, please remember, none of us were there or present. So this is all based on perspective of survivors and documents that have become available over time. We all have our own thoughts and opinions. So let's be respectful to each other and each other's thoughts and opinions, and let's have a good conversation. With that said, I am going to bring up our guest and let him introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Hello. I can.
Hi. Okay, perfect. My name is Jason Schwechter. I have been studying Jonestown since 2008. On and off over the years, I've written several articles for the San Diego State University's Jonestown Institute, which is headed by Dr. Rebecca Moore, who is a religious studies professor there, as well as Fielding McGee III, who is the head of the Jonestown Institute. I'd like to thank both of them for their help over the years for the information I've gathered. And I'd also like to help the other members of the research groups, basically the 2020 Jonestown Restoration Group, including Joel Thomas and Rick Hay. It's really an international movement that has covered the entire world. I'd like to give them thanks. I'd also like to say that I have never made a dollar off of any of my research, nor do I want to. And I know that's the same feeling of Dr. Moore and Mr. McGee and the rest of us. We do not want to profit on the tragedy of this loss. But I'm here today to share with you the beginnings of Jonestown, and the beginnings of Jonestown and the church itself happened actually in Indianapolis before they ever moved to Guyana, before they ever got to California.
Okay. Let me see. We got. Yes, this could be a trigger warning for some. So if we can all know that that's a possibility. Sorry, guys. It was kind of hectic to getting started tonight. I had to run and grab some stuff for my mom's celebration of life for her memorial board. So, all right. So let's see. Well, let's go ahead and start back in Indianapolis when Jim Jones had basically gathered church,
Okay, well, let's start with a little bit of biographicals on Jim Jones real quick. Jim Jones was born May 13th of 1931 in Crete, Indiana. His history was a very interesting history. Both him and a friend of his from childhood have stated that his father was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. In fact, Jim and his father basically stopped talking for years after his father refused to let an African American friend of his into the house. Jim Jones was always very interested in religion, and he was kind of an outcast as a child in many respects, but he became very much a viewer of communism and more communal type and socialistic beliefs in his life. Having read books by Hitler, Marx, Mao, Gandhi, Stalin, you name it, he read it. He worked at Reed Hospital as an orderly, where he actually met his wife, who was a nurse there, named Marcelin Jones, and they got married in 1949. His beginning in the church environment, he basically started off as a child ministering and would go into African American neighborhoods as a Caucasian male and minister there as a child. He would basically do funerals for animals of his friends, and that kind of brought him into it. Originally, because of his communistic beliefs and the fact that he attended, communistic rallies right in the middle of the McCarthy era, which was an era where there was a red under every bed, and people were persecuted and blackballed in Hollywood, etc., for ties to communism. He was able to, thanks to a Methodist church, he basically became a student pastor at a Methodist church. He left that church because they refused to integrate with African Americans, and so he began to set up his own church. This was roughly, he became a student pastor in 1952. In 1954, he started his own church in Indianapolis, which was called the Community Unity Church.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jones had observed in the past faith healings and realized that he could use methods like that to accomplish his personal social goals. Also, it tended to increase people's faith in him, and also generated money and other resources that would help finance the operations all through the years. In 1956, Jones bought his first building. The building was located in a racially mixed neighborhood and was given the name People's Temple Full Gospel Church, which was later lowered down to just the People's Temple. One thing I'd like to mention is People's Temple is not spelled Peoples', like most people would think. There is no apostrophe. It is People's Temple, like the plural of people. I know it sounds a little weird, but it is what it is. Jim Jones by himself at the beginning did not really have a whole lot as far as an audience. So he worked to organize several conventions with other Pentecostal pastors. Some of those conventions drew over 10,000 people. Jones and other preachers conducted healings. But really, this was about trying to build up a group. The temple's original thing was to stress egalitarian.
You're okay.
Egalitarian. My language is off on that. Always on that one word.
Hey, you know what?
Ideals.
You're doing better than what I would. Welcome, Jet's mom. She's helping. She's always my co-host.
Hello, Jet's mom.
AKA Margie Mel.
Yes, my Margie Mel. Hi, sissy.
Yeah.
people were allowed to attend this church in casual clothes. They did not have to dress up like you'd think of normal going into church. It was open to everybody, poor and rich, African American, Caucasian. It didn't matter who you were. If you wanted to go there, you could go there. Now, this was very unusual in Indiana at the time, both because of the communistic viewpoint of the country, and also because there was a heavy Ku Klux Klan presence in Indiana at the time. So for a Caucasian pastor to have all these things going on was very, very, very unique at that time. In the 60s, in 1960, there was a soup kitchen that was open to help expand the social services of the church, and he was given a position where he was appointed to the Indianapolis Civil or Human Rights Commission to help desegregate everything from the police to hospitals. In fact, one of the stories is he was in the hospital and he was accidentally put in an African American ward. Not only did he refuse to leave that ward, but it was said that he was changing the bedpans and, helping to increase the spirits of the African Americans in that ward, and eventually led to the desegregation of that hospital.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So some very positive in terms of, the civil rights movements that were taking place at that time. He was quite influential.
Oh, yes, especially. Go ahead,
play.
Sorry. Yeah, he was definitely very influential. He basically focused on helping to desegregate before the move to California. His belief was not really one of, it was really a belief that you'd refer to as religious communalism, where everyone would donate their material and possessions in the church in exchange for the church meeting the needs of the people. So people donated their Social Security checks and would have a place to live. They'd have their food, things of that nature.
Okay, so I just want to make it, I'm going to quickly state that everything we're discussing, we have a link in the description to the Jonestown website, where you can get a lot of more information that we won't be able to cover, all in its entirety, because there was multiple people that were there. And on that site, you can also find like death records, how they were related to who, and all of that, like what they did in Jonestown, several just different little facts. So that link will be down in the description, so that way everybody knows. And that's where I'm going to be pulling up pictures throughout the whole thing, and flashing them on the screen. So.
Perfect. Now I should warn people that are going to look at this site. There are thousands and thousands of pages. There's thousands and thousands of audio tapes that were found in Jonestown and recovered by the FBI. They're not necessarily in order, but there are many tapes there. And for everybody that has gotten into researching this in any kind of depth, I should warn you that it's like peeling back an onion. You peel back the layer, there's 10 more layers beneath that. Beneath that layer, there's 10 more for each of those layers. You can literally make this a life's journey, which basically Mr. McGee has done. And he is still working on it to this day, well into his 70s. And he's been working on this since basically the 70s. His wife, Dr. Rebecca Moore, lost several family members in Jonestown.
Okay, so going back to Indianapolis, where we left off, right? Okay.
Right.
All right, so these are all pictures from 1972, I do believe I'm in, or 68 to 72, I believe.
Okay,
so if we can get there.
So no, we need to go back further. because we're in 68 already, we're already looking at Redwood Valley, which is located by Ukiah, California. The church started to move to Ukiah in 63. Jones was on the Human Rights Commission in 1960. And in 1962, Jim Jones read an article in Esquire magazine that talked about the nuclear apocalypse. And Jim Jones was a big believer that the nuclear apocalypse was going to occur. At least that's what he told the church. And relocated the church to Redwood Valley in California, as it was listed as one of the places that would survive a nuclear strike, an all-out nuclear attack between the United States and Russia, or at the time the USSR. But another reason why, in my personal belief, the church moved is he was having problems in the Midwest convincing people of the ideas of socialism and communism and the communal effect. And people were, it turned into an area where it was a better idea to move it over to California.
Okay. And then that's when they went to California.
Yes.
Okay.
They started in about 63, and by 67 or so, they were in California. In 1970, they began holding services in both San Francisco and Los Angeles. And that is where the majority of the members were from. There were some people that were with him from the beginning, but a lot of them moved over. I should also mention that Jim Jones, give me just one quick second. In 1959, which we mentioned, he joined the Christian Church, also known as the Disciples of Christ. And that church, and basically it all came from that. He started basically with a Methodist background and a Methodist as a student pastor in the Methodist church, and finally came up with his own church. Although at times he did abandon the Bible and focused on beliefs of Gandhi and other sources, such as revolutionaries like Karl Marx, like Mao, like Stalin, revolutionaries, especially at the time when they were around.
Jason, on that note, one of the questions that keeps popping into my head is, this was certainly an era where we were coming from, the baby boomers, and this is technically the children that were born in that baby boom, and they're reliberating themselves with, whether it be the hippie movements, then there's on the religious side. And I think you were about to kind of go into that a little bit. Where did Jim Jones get his, and I hate to use the word cultish mentality, but where people give everything they own to the church to fund this. For example, the move to California, that was only possible because of the people that he congregated with prior, correct? Because there was a fiscal issue there with his own life at that moment.
Well, first of all, Jim Jones would not be considered a baby boomer. He would be considered a child of the Depression era because he was born in 31.
I'm talking about the disciples and the era itself. I'm not talking about him.
So part of it was Jim Jones was an outsider as a child. And I think that's a really important point to mention. A lot of the other children thought he was weird. And he had his own little ways of trying to basically achieve a liking, if you would. Some people try and find their own way. He liked the idea of basically, since he was an outsider, being a person of power, a person that people respected and adored, especially coming from that, from that kind of childhood. His mom was a very staunch supporter of him. She was a member of the church. She eventually did move to Jonestown and died of natural causes there. And she was one of the few people that was completely exempt from ever having to go to services if she didn't want to. but his actual beliefs came from his readings, came from his beliefs that, we all bleed red. And it eventually moved to the idea that if we all bleed red, and his readings and influences by Marx, Mao, Gandhi, Stalin, that kind of led into it. I personally think, and this is, my personal belief, that some of his readings by Adolf Hitler influenced kind of the cult mentality a little bit into how that worked out. But basically, the idea was, let's share together and form a better society than what was going on with civil rights and race riots in the United States, rich versus poor. At the time, it would have been black versus white, and try and form something better. He also did believe in many respects of equality between women and men. In fact, some of the most important of the people in the inner circle were women. And that's something that was very abnormal for the time. We're talking about a period where men still thought they had bigger brains than women. And
I mean, I don't think that era ever overcame itself.
it's coming along.
I mean, it's getting there a little bit. But
yeah,
would you there was somebody that we were speaking. Would you read private chat, Jason, and let me know?
Siren, if you're still here, let us know.
We were wondering if you would like to come up on panel, because I know you said that you had a lot of questions, and maybe you could help us maybe dive a little bit.
Okay, I'm trying to pull this up, so give me a second.
The question was, would you be okay with, having somebody else join us for like...
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay. Let's see if Byron's still here. And if he answers...
I'll shoot a link on Discord.
Okay. Did he say he was here?
Now I see the chat button.
Yeah, it's over off to the side. I think my whole thing just froze. There we go. Oh, there he is. He's here. I'm here, but I'm face painting. We aren't to the point of that question, that I had questions yet. Okay, well, I mean, you're more than welcome to join that panel if you'd like.
Sarah, you can Discord me questions if you don't want to put them in chat, and I can reiterate them for you if something pops up.
Sorry, I'm still technologically challenged here, so yeah, if somebody could shoot me the questions by over the voice, that would probably be best. I know that we were planning on just covering the Indianapolis, Indiana section, but we can move past that. If people would like
I just wanted to start at that point, and we can kind of slowly progress into everything, and depending on how we are looking for time and all of that tonight, we'll discuss how far we go.
What is your time frame tonight? Are you looking for like about an hour? Is that what you're thinking?
I really don't have one. Just depends on how interested everybody is and how well things go, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we can continue on.
Now, if I didn't mention it, did I cover the faith healing stuff?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so Jim Jones had observed some faith healing stuff during his period of time in Indiana, and realized it was through the Seventh-day Baptist Church at the time. He realized that the idea of faith healing could attract people, generate income. He'd be able to reach his own personal goals. There were people, just like I'm sure occurs now, that would be plants in the audience that he would heal. And what is the point of that? Inevitably, to increase the amount of money the church gets, to increase the number of people that join, which basically could be used to help the poor. But, think about this as well. The poor really had no place where they fit in. Many of them were African American, many of them, and being poor or homeless, having free food and a roof over their head. If somebody were to provide that to somebody who has absolutely nothing, that person is a savior to that person. So
Jason, weren't there also there were? I'm sorry, it's my microwave. Uh, wasn't there also a lot of families? So, for example, women that had children that were mixed race, and there's a lot of this too. That these were people who, you know, were going to be denied by all cultures right in front of them. There were a lot of families that my understanding was most of the children were actually, either of, other like different ethnicities, but mostly like it's very interesting because that there's one mother that has a story about this before going to Jonestown, and I'm sure you've heard about that too, which was kind of a big deal for the time. Anyways.
Well, that is very true. A lot more of that was occurring in the LA, San Francisco area, and definitely in Jonestown itself. We're moving ahead, a few years when we're talking about that. But Jim Jones, three of his sons, Jim Jones Jr., Stephen Jones, who was a blood child, Tim Jones, all survived the Jonestown, what we'll call the Jonestown Massacre, because they were away in Georgetown on a basketball trip at the time. But there were other people that were either adopted by or believed to be fathered by Jim Jones. There was definitely mixed families, African American and Caucasian, Asian American mixes in there. It basically was we all bleed red kind of society. And actually, not to jump forward, but even though the church was all inclusive, in the very end, he used the racial divide as part of his way to get people to commit suicide.
Wow. Sorry, guys, I'm just playing around with some photos.
Back up one.
Okay, back up. This one?
No, one more, please.
This one?
Okay, so this is a perfect example of Jim Jones here. If you see the size of the crowd behind him, I mean, he would go to very large crowds, and he not only focused on the church. He was at NAACP meetings where he was quoted as basically telling them, "Let my people go." The people in Indiana wanted him, even the people on the commission that he was on, wanted him to tone it down just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
I know my melt over there tells me sometimes to simmer down a little bit. She knows it's never going to happen, but but they wanted him to tone it down, and he refused. He continued to move forward. He continued to push the belief. The temple basically in Indianapolis went from basically a 15% African American membership to about half.
Good to you.
So that was kind of important. They had also brought in other African American preachers. They had brought up people like Father Divine that came into it, from the founder of the International Peace Mission movement. There have been, in several different ways, he basically tried to bring the community together. He would quote Karl Marx. there were different times that Jones would paint Jesus as a communist. And it was around that time that the temple started tightening up controls and asking more of its members than normal. So basically, at this point, when you were part of the temple, you were part of the temple family. You're going way too far. That looks like you're in Guyana at this point.
Oh, okay. I'm just.
Yeah, the Jonestown Pioneers would be the original people that started to settle the land before the mass emigration from the United States occurred. They were the people that were hand carrying water and setting up what was supposed to be paradise in the rainforest.
So, do we want to go to Georgetown?
I believe the next place we should probably cover is California. Do we have anything on California?
I do believe we got Los
Los
Angeles.
Angeles.
We did
Yeah.
the temple already. I already went through those.
Oh, the Los Angeles Temple?
Yep, I went through those ones. Those was just a few of those.
Okay. So basically, to give you a quick idea, in Jones basically started off in Redwood Valley, which is by Ukiah, where he had about 140 total members, of which 50% was African American. There were many people that increased the credibility of the People's Temple. Timothy Stone was a deputy district attorney and actually became a member of the church. But there was a lot more that went into it. Jim Jones helped to get people elected. Jim Jones met with former President Carter's wife and had a lecture or a thing with her in right there at the time. They had pretty much, I mean, the number of people that were really involved and the way that they were able to do this, it was not just in these things. Stops included with the temple. I mean, people were going to Houston, Detroit, Cleveland, all over the country to basically spread the word of Jim Jones, discuss what was going on. And Jim Jones was supported by a lot of people that you would never imagine. He did things. Back. I'll get back to Indiana. He would write to Nazi party leaders and then pass the responses back to the media. He himself believed that he had a rainbow family. The Joneses
He basically
adopted.
made a bigger name for himself than what he.
Right. In 54, he adopted Agnes, who was part Native American. In 59, he adopted 3 Korean American children. Before the move, when the move actually occurred, the focus turned basically after Redwood Valley, like I said, to LA and San Francisco. But the real focus and the real power base behind it was really in San Francisco. In fact, as we heard from our last live, there's a line in Q042, what's known as the death tape, that the people in San Francisco will not be idle. He met privately with the vice president candidate Walter Mondale before the 76 election, First Lady Rosalind Carter. He helped to elect George Moscone as mayor in 75. So you can see he had a lot of power base of people in political authorities that basically helped to bring him in. Assemblyman Willie Brown served as the MC at one point for a dinner for Jones, attended by the governor at the time, Jerry Brown, and the lieutenant governor. It was really quite amazing to see how Jones basically was able to work not just the poor and the downtrodden, and then people that were viewed neglected or second-class citizens of society, but also work the political elite to achieve and have the protection and have the clout that the church wanted, and really the clout that he himself wanted.
Secrets don't make friends. Yeah, that's true.
Very true. And there's definitely a lot of secrets in this whole thing.
Okay, and we got a question from Siren. The one question I had for tonight is that I need a better explanation of the public punishment that Jim Jones called catharsis.
Catharsis.
Yeah.
That's a little. It's if you have a specific. I mean, unless you can answer Jason, because there's a couple ways to look at it.
Jim Jones used several forms of public punishment. If you had the energy, to basically fight, when you were in Jonestown, then there would be like a private boxing ring for the two people to fight it out. There were boxes where you could be basically caged. You could have been drugged. You could have been called before the church and before the entire membership and basically be put down. Jim Jones used to
put down. You make that sound like an animal.
No, put down, basically called about your own personal transgressions. All the while, Jim Jones was committing a lot of personal transgressions himself.
Hypocritical, exactly where I was going to head with it. That's what my question. I'm curious where this question is. There might be more of a specific aspect to that question. That's why, because the hypocrisy that he had within his own,
Oh yeah, the people in Jonestown, for example, were basically drinking water, eating mostly plant-based whatnot. He had a refrigerator with Coca-Cola in his own personal cabin. So
he also preached about the, sexual transgressions to his congregation. Yet he was also known to be bisexual as well as a womanizer. And
that is correct. He was bisexual. He actually was arrested, but through political channels got out of it by luring by trying to entice, or what's the correct word? Not entice, and not solicit, because it's not for money, but basically, huh?
Oh, it's not I don't know.
Well, solicit, but not for money. A undercover police officer who then he followed into the bathroom and then pulled out his penis and started masturbating in front of the cop. And that's how he got arrested on that. He said he would minister to people that were homosexual and, in fact, engaged in homosexual activities. His viewpoint was to basically help him to understand their situation and how to best minister to them. But there are records that show up in the Jonestown Institute by people that actually were there at the time. One of them, and one of the ones that is the most disturbing, was there was a gentleman there, and Jim Jones basically told him to suck his dick. And to not worry about the herpes because they were scabbed over. Yeah. Other people were willing to sleep with Jim Jones while he was married to Marceline. Carolyn Layton, who's again part of the Moore family, was a concubine and close relation to Jim Jones, and some people were unwillingly brought to him to have sex with, and when they started to refuse, they would be drugged. They would suffer because at that point he was viewed as the
Messiah.
Well, basically, if you want,
so he basically wanted them. They had to give it.
if you believe, so it is for you. So if you believed him to be the Father, so it was for you. If you believed him to be the Messiah, so it was for you. If you believed him to be a prophet, so it was to you. But with his actions, with the faith healings and whatnot, it was very difficult, especially, at that point in time in society. We didn't have a whole lot of knowledge of how these things worked,
Mhm.
etc. Back 50s and 70s. And remember, we were also, in the time that this is going on, Vietnam's going on. There were Vietnam vets that joined the church. There were, there was a whole lot of civil rights stuff. There was a whole lot of anti-war stuff. There were movements away from the standard, side with the U.S. belief. I mean, if you think about how many people that were coming back from Vietnam and were literally having human feces being thrown at them when they would land from the airport. Do you think those soldiers really wanted to be in Vietnam for the most part? No, but they were ordered to by the government. They did the job that a U.S. citizen should do, and they suffered from other U.S. citizens from it. And many of them found that being rejected by the rest of society, they found comfort within the church.
Okay. Well, I'm just kind of still dumbfounded on the fact that if he wanted to sleep with them, they had no choice.
It's not that they didn't have a choice. It was, there was a level of coercion there that was going on. Later, once they were in Jonestown, once they had moved out of San Francisco. In fact, Jim Jones left San Francisco and California because there were comments
Negations.
coming up of him with his sexual impropriety and his
There was a money issue too, wasn't there? With like what he purchased there and a
well,
bankruptcy possibly.
he did buy dormitories and things of that nature, but there were issues, everything from basically the viewpoint of what we would consider to be elder fraud or elder abuse today,
Right. Yeah.
where
Okay.
he would take people's social security or welfare checks. But he was, if you think about it, on the way he was thinking about it at the time, he's providing food, clothing, shelter, etc. for these people. And if you look at today's society and you look at our elders that do not have family to take care of them, if they go into a nursing home, all but $25 of their Social Security money goes to the nursing home. That $25 is used for them to buy incidentals like soap, shampoo, etc. But all their medicine, their food, their shelter is covered. And yeah, our society still works very
Oh no,
similar to the way.
well, so for example, let's say you need to go into a skilled care nursing facility. Most people don't understand this when this happens because when it happens early in life. Let's say you own a home and you've owned your home for 50 years. It's you don't realize that just because you qualify for this certain type of care, you immediately need to liquidate your assets.
Absolutely,
Before you
because
go
you got
into
to.
it.
You have
Yeah.
to because they will take it all from you.
Yeah.
And so many people, I can't even tell you how many friends who lost their parents very young out of nowhere had no idea that they're putting their parents in a skilled facility through hospice or whatever, and suddenly they have no inheritance
Yeah.
because I think the cost for, even though you have to be on Social Security and
Mhm.
they can take your whole check and give you $25, they're still going to charge you 20 a month. They're still going to charge you 10 a month depending on how much money you have. It's
Oh no, it's about $365 a day.
well, technically it's more than that depending on the actual. They're not going to charge you for certain things if you have assets. If you don't have assets, they can't. They're not going to.
Mhm.
And this is something you can sue for that, but it's a,
Right.
anyways.
I know
It's
that
a
when my
long
aunt
process.
went into her in-home facility living thing into the nursing home, she literally had to sell her house and all of it, and she actually sold it to my cousin. But I mean, so that way it was still in the family for him or for the family. But you do literally have to liquidate everything.
Well, if I may, let me read you something. Give me just a moment, if I may,
Uh huh.
to find it here. Just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here, I don't know if you can see it very clearly. This is an original
Well,
document
I have
that I
that.
have.
Let me. I can pull
I
that up
have
for you.
here.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I have it right here. The actual book here. Now, like I said, Dr. Rebecca Moore of San Diego State
Mhm.
University. Her father was Reverend Moore, and actually, I have his copy of the agricultural documents here. He opened up. He opened up to the beginning of this, and I'd like to just read this here to you guys. This is a book of basically propaganda quotes, okay? But it opens up a feeling of freedom. Um, the part about Dr. Moore. I'm John Moore, and this is Reverend John Moore. We have two daughters who are members of the temple. One, the older, is a teacher, the younger one is a nurse. Okay, the nurse was Anne Moore or Annie Moore. The two words that come to my mind as I was there and I tried to reflect on my experiences were impressive and amazing. It almost boggles the mind to see that great clearing and to understand how so much could have been done in a relatively short period of time. We wore ourselves out walking around the facility. I think about 800 to 1,000 acres have been cleared and it's in the midst of a jungle. And that's part of what's impressive. And all except a part of the land that's not finally been cleared had been planted with various crops. We went to the piggery, the chicory, to the dairy, to the mill, where the refining of flour from the tubers of cassava is done. We were first impressed, certainly I was, with seeing the older people at the time. We arrived about noon, engaged in calisthenics with the instructor, keeping their limbs and joints limber. And then we went to the nursery where we saw the child care center. They have probably 35 preschoolers. I don't know how many they have in school. They have newborn babies. Several babies have been born there. They have a daycare facility for parents who work, and there are those who are caring for them. And when they have, and then they have the older people. That's really part of the beauty of it, we felt. Now, I'm going to move ahead here in this book because there are quotes from so many people. But one of the key things that was amazing was a quote here by Charles Gary, who was
I
a
I was wondering. So in all, like out of the survivors that was left, are they all like? Are they? I guess what is their outlook on everything about like the whole Jonestown living and stuff like that? You know what I mean?
well. Let me
Are
just
we
read
going too
this
far
one.
ahead? I guess.
Let me just read this one quote because I want to talk about the medical care for the seniors for a second.
Okay. Okay.
Um, Charles Gary said, I was impressed by the medical center particularly. All of the older citizens live right around the medical compound. The medical compound is something that you never have seen and you probably won't see unless you go there. It's almost a miracle. This young doctor who was trained by the temple, graduated with high honors from the University of California at Irvine, has performed miracles. Every morning at 8 o'clock, someone knocks on the cottage door, and just going to put in parentheses here, of the seniors, and says, did anyone have any difficulties last night? Can you imagine the feeling of security that these folks, meaning the seniors, have to feel that someone cares for them, is interested in them, and will do things for them? That is not something that we have for our seniors today. It's not something that we had for our seniors in the 60s and 70s either. And so you can understand why seniors would be very happy to be in a community where they were looked after and treated with respect. Seniors were people that were given cottages rather than live in dormitories. They if they wanted to have their own place, they were given that individual right and that freedom to have their own place, but they were still taken care of by the collective whole. That was part of the whole idea of the utopia of Jonestown and the goodness of Jonestown. But, the old saying when you're thinking of photography, the dark or the brighter the picture, the darker the negative. There were very dark things about Jonestown and the People's Temple, and we're covering both at the same time today. So it gets kind of interesting when we go through how this all came together. But really, Jonestown itself, when Jim Jones left due to his sexual impropriety, it was an exodus for a number of reasons. But basically, several people went over, and he basically left for a number of reasons. One was he was not able to hide his drug addiction from most of the members. He was addicted to barbiturates. In fact, on our last live tape, when we listened to Q042, you can hear as the conversation goes on, he starts slurring more and more. I don't know if you noticed that, but it definitely
I actually have that the first little clip live that we did privated. So I will probably do an upload of the clips separately after this. I will record it and do an upload of it.
Right. If you listen to him at the beginning of it versus the end of it, you'll see that that he starts slurring more and more and more as the conversation goes on. Yeah, Crystal, yes, it's 380, but they build Medicare. However, there is a 90-day per year maximum, and then there's an additional 90 days you can get for quote unquote catastrophic. But if a person needs long-term skilled care, the Medicare doesn't cover it after a certain point.
Oh. Yes, a commune, it would have worked had it not been ran by a madman.
Well, like I said, we do have working examples of communes and communism. In Israel right now, there are several places called kibbutzes, or the sequel, or the plural would be kibbutzim, that basically everybody works for the collective good. Everybody eats in a standard eating area, but these are not places where people are forced to stay. These are not places where your passport was taken away upon entering Guyana. These, where your jewelry and your jewelry was not really a necessary item working the fields.
I think what Cristola is saying is more of like an Orson Welles type of situation. The absolute power corrupts absolutely. We're not necessarily saying that, yes, there is a possible vision of utopic, socialism, communism, whatever the word is for. I mean, I would love to have are you kidding, Jason? I'd buy a compound with you and Stephanie, Cristola, pretty much everybody in this chat. I'd be like, let's get our house. Let's build
our own little cult.
No, I mean, I get that, but see, this is the difference here is you have an absolute power. And this is where this is where I think what she's heading with. So it's not necessarily that it's not a feasible thing. So right. I want you to keep going. I want you to keep building that up, because that's where we're heading to.
But the rank and file, the people that were actually there, were expecting to come to paradise on earth. They were for the idea of the communistic lifestyle. They thought they were going to peace on earth. Instead, they were going to 16-hour days where Jim Jones was reading the news over the intercoms or over the PAs, and sleep-deprived nights when he would basically wake everybody up under a term called white knight, which was considered to be a security threat to the entire commune itself. So through sleep deprivation, through long hours in the fields, through malnutrition,
Right.
there were a lot of ways of him controlling
Manipulated.
these people. Well, not manipulating, but weakening the resolve of the human mind would be
How
the
is that
best
not
way of putting.
manipulation?
Well, you could argue that's manipulation, but it's really, in my mind, it is manipulation, but it isn't. He used sleep deprivation, but everybody was for the concepts. Even when it gets down to when we get down to the very end and the actual suicides at Jonestown, these had been rehearsed a billion times before, and it was considered to be a test of your faith, a test of your conviction, a test of your connection
Dedication.
to the people your dedication to the people standing next to you. And so, really,
I'm just
how
going to
did
say the word attest is someone that has massive control over a population using the words a test in any sort of dialogue to me equals 100% manipulation. That
and
that
I don't
is manipulation. The
and I don't
definition of that was manipulative behavior to create a
Right.
society based upon his own paranoia.
Right.
and I don't disagree with you. You have to understand that.
Brainwashing is a better word for it.
Oh, I would definitely go with brainwashing. Yeah,
Yep.
and I would say that they were able to
That it
basically
is.
weaken and break down the people through these methods. And then when these methods didn't work or somebody would protest, they'd get drugged. Um, the the catch is you have to understand that there's a lot of mystery that goes along with the People's Temple and Jonestown. One of the People's Temple members that was considered a very trusted aide de camp, if you would, of Jim Jones, was actually hooking up with the or the ambassador to the U.S. from Guyana. So there's a lot of things going on here. Some places like to quote websites like Above Top Secret and say that this is MK Ultra, but really, if you look at it, he was communistic way before MK Ultra really came about. You really think the CIA is going to trust somebody who's got ties to the Communist Party and not have it come out? Just because they were in the middle of the jungle didn't mean that they didn't have any way of communication. We have communication records and QSR cards, which are the cards that amateur radio operators send each other, saying that they've made communication from Jonestown all over the world. So when parts needed to be ordered for, say, a refrigerator unit, as an example, or really a generator or something of the nature, they could call back in to the people in San Francisco and give them the information. In fact, the FCC basically attempted to take away
Yeah.
their radio licenses because they were using it for commercial purposes.
Okay, Cristola says, I think he needed to be in control because he had to have control. Once he had power, he had to keep it. So therefore, the brainwashing began.
Yeah, it's very true. And he also did have, we were talking about Mr. Muggs. Part of the way that he funded the church operations in Indianapolis was to sell monkeys door to door, literal monkeys.
Yeah, shout out to
Um,
Mr. Muggs, the monkey that they had.
yeah, who unfortunately was forced to die with the rest of them.
Yeah.
A very sad thing, but there are many pictures of Jim Jones holding Mr. Muggs. Mr.
Yeah.
Muggs had his own house, if you would. It's really a crazy situation. Keep in mind that people get enamored with the story because of like Crystal is just saying right now about the MK Ultra stuff coming about in the 50s. But at that point, Jim Jones was a communist and appearing in communist meetings in the United States.
Yeah.
Is the CIA going to trust somebody who is a known communist? to come on board with MK Ultra. That's why, you know, a lot of people have gotten into the questions because they have not gone through the thousands and thousands of pages of documents that have been obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. It took uh, Mr. McGee and Dr. Moore probably about $250,000 in legal expenses to obtain these documents, these tapes that we have now to look at. People think they hear things in the tapes, which we talked about the other day, that the audio experts have been able to disprove, and we've been able to figure out exactly what those noises are that people are hearing. There was so much going on with this that it's very easy for people to look at the conspiracy sides of things. But if you actually look at the physical documents that exist, you can see that even though people like Dwyer, who was a gentleman who worked for the U.S. Embassy, down in Guyana, who accompanied Leo Ryan and current Congress lady Jackie Spears to Guyana. You know, people say that he was CIA. He appears in a who's who of the CIA, but he was really part of, the Department of State, and he was there. Some people believe that the whole idea was to basically use the deaths and everybody else of Jonestown to eliminate Congressman Ryan. But we have to look at the facts and the actual documents that exist. We have to look at the actual paperwork that we've gotten from Washington. We have to look at the actual documents that were written in Jonestown by the people of Jonestown, the tapes of Jonestown, to really look at it. And I'm not going to say that I never entertained some of these thoughts. Some of the information that's come out is, sounds really that it could be spot on, but it wasn't. I mean, myself has even questioned Tim Carter, who was one of a few people that lived from Jonestown. Tim Carter and his brother and another gentleman were basically left to basically deliver money to the Russian embassy. This was basically beforehand. Jim Jones basically told him to kill his wife and child. And he had a suitcase full of money and gold and riches and paperwork for the Russian embassy that they basically threw into the jungle as they were getting out. Now, my question is, how could malnourished people carry a suitcase full of gold and materials? But his story has never changed over the years. His story has always remained the facts. And we know the materials were there, so it's safe to say that the story is true. That story sounds outlandish to most people, but it's rooted in more truth than a lot of the CIA cooperation on MK Ultra did.
Hey, Robbie.
Hey, Robbie.
Thanks for dropping in.
I saw your text. That's so funny.
Right. So, I'm kind of lost at where we're at for right now. We're leading into when they have left California in going into Guyana now.
Yeah. So basically, Jim Jones had a lot of political figures in San Francisco, within the state of California, within the newspaper system. So basically, he had connections within the political system, within the journalism system, within the civil rights system, everything from the NAACP to which was back in the Indianapolis days, all the way through, but it did not basically allow for more and more people to basically come about and start to mention. Oh, there's Mr. Muggs.
Yeah.
And
The
start
mixer.
to mention. Yeah, that's Mr. Muggs. That he was involved in sexual deviancy. That people were being brainwashed. Um, there's mention of Timothy Stower in the final tape of Jonestown. Timothy Stower was a man that was um, part of the temple. He was married, and actually, um, his wife um, had a child that was actually Jim Jones's child, if my memory serves correctly. His wife basically separated from him and divorced him some years later, before the move to Guyana. And Timothy Stower actually became one of the most important people to mention, as far because he was the one who set up the group of the concerned families, the concerned relatives, that basically convinced the senator to go down to Guyana and check out what's going on. But
Mr.
before
Muggs
we,
really played a big role in their lives, huh?
well, Jim Jones was said to love animals, and Mr. Muggs was very important to Jim himself.
Sorry about
Um,
that, guys.
it,
I have
so
a chihuahua
basically,
that's a crybaby. I am so sorry.
it's fine, it's fine. But I mean, there was um, starting in about 72, there were papers both in San Francisco and Indianapolis that were reporting stories of, the that basically had gone on about what was going on in the church, that the claims of the healings, etc. There were some defections before this before 73, but there was a group called that was referred to as a Gang of Eight that left in 73, and that was a big deal. And Jones basically attempted to find these people. They scanned highways from rented airplanes. Um, the Gang of Eight ended up driving 3 trucks loaded with firearms uh, to basically, they ended up in Montana, but they started up for California. Um, there was a lot of beliefs on why these people left, but as these people started to leave more and more and more, plans were made. Go up one. Is that
Mhm.
any more? Can't tell from that closeness. That's Jim Jones right there. Jim Jones, you can always tell he always basically wore his sunglasses. So it's an easy way to identify him. Those are some of the parrots,
The
cats.
animals.
And you can see that, just looking at these pictures, you can see that a very, that there are, it is a mixed race environment that these people lived in. African Americans, Caucasians, Asian Americans, all worked side by side, all went to school side by side, all played basketball side to side, rejoiced side to side, worked the fields side to side, built homes, built shelters, did everything. So when these people basically went to Guyana, when there was this, when people started basically this exodus to Guyana, the first group that got there were the pioneers or the frontiersmen. It was a small group. I don't know if you have a picture of them.
I got pictures of the pioneers. Yep. I can
Yep.
go back up to the
So
pioneers group.
yeah. So basically, the pioneer group was a small group of people that started the initial clearings of the area to basically make way so that more people could come. When people came in, you could not fly directly to Jonestown. It was impossible. You would land in the capital of Guyana, which is a place called Georgetown, and there was a place called Lama Gardens, which was the People's Temple, if you would, outpost in Georgetown. And from there, they would arrange transportation by boat to
Mhm.
Jonestown, which
How long did it take to get to Jonestown once you arrived?
once you arrived in Guyana, it really depended on, first of all, the boat, because the boat was used to haul lumber, food, etc. But it was a long journey that involved basically both ocean and river transport to get to a spot where they could be let in.
Okay,
For those,
How did they
we
know
have
about this
maps.
place and this plot of land to be able to
Right.
host this whole thing?
No, I mean, like, what was so?
the
It,
Guyanese
best case
government.
and worst case scenario. We're talking like 3 days in. Are we talking like 2 days minimum? Are we talking, if you just got lucky?
Multiple days. Well, it was multiple days by boat.
So we're talking. So that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted you to say was that it took multiple days to get there, and then you're
Yeah.
there. So you've already been traumatized by already. And I guarantee you, many people that went to Jonestown, this was their first plane ride. This is their first time traveling anywhere ever.
For the African Americans, yes.
No,
And
I
then
would
how
no,
did they,
no, it wouldn't
how
matter.
did they find this
No, it wouldn't. It
specific
would be
plot
any
of
race.
land?
Well, many of the Caucasians that came over, many of them came from families that had money. So
I read.
the idea that they had not been on a plane before would have been a different thing. But remember, this was like,
Jason, this is also like in '78. People
oh
didn't
wait,
go
there's the
on
boat.
plane
There's the
rides.
boat. There's the boat. There's the boat. See the boat?
Okay, yep.
That is the boat that they would be transported on. That rickety boat. They'd be more traumatized by that boat ride, I think, than by the
Okay,
plane.
Jason. So my question is how did they know about this specific plot of land and that it was available for them to build on it?
The land in Guyana is mostly rainforest. There are not,
Right.
outside of the urban areas, it was not very well developed. Number one. Number two, the government was more aligned with Jim Jones's way of thinking, which was a key part of it as well. Number three, they were considered non-aligned, meaning they were, if you look at what, a lot of people don't understand what the definition back in the day was of first world, second world, and third world countries were. First world countries were countries that were aligned with the United States, such as the powers of NATO. Second world countries were powers that were allied with Russia, China, etc. Third world countries were the unaligned, but just because a country was unaligned did not mean that they didn't have either socialist or communistic leadership. And the government of Guyana survived on exportation of lumber and mining as big things. When Jim Jones comes with a handful of money or a briefcase full of money and says, hey, I want to set up an agricultural commune, the Guyanese government looked at it as a very good thing for their community and for their system. In fact, let me see if I can find it here real quick. Let's see.
Wouldn't it be a red flag to be so far away from everything, though?
A quote directly from the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Guyana: "Peace and love in action." The chief medical officer of the Ministry of Health labeled the project impressive. The Minister of Education. It was it was considered a very positive movement in Guyana, what they were trying to do by
What
the
was your question
Guyanese
again,
government.
Margie?
I'm saying it's. I wonder how much the people that took the steps to move out there actually knew about location and everything, because I find it very interesting just looking at the map you shared. When I mean, obviously there was other possibilities that were closer to society, which they could actually they
this was so recluse.
they didn't need to be so far away. But I mean, you'd think it would be a red flag, right? Like, I mean,
well, one thing is no extradition. Be very difficult to get extradition.
Well, that's what. Well, it wouldn't matter.
That would
if you're saying a lot of white people that didn't want to. This is what you just said. That you said there were a lot of rich white people there. Like, you think that would be a red flag, right? You know, where they could be like, "Mom, Dad, send me some money. You know, I want to come home." But they did it on purpose to keep them so far away. So that's where I want to kind of dive into a little bit, is why so far away?
Well,
why so secluded?
Part of it is just like when you look at Waco. You know, if you look at where Waco is located, and Branch Davidian compound, Waco, Texas, is home of Baylor University, but where the Branch Davidians were was a very isolated area. The only real communication, the only communication into or out of Jonestown was either if you were one of the trusted people that was allowed to go to and from Georgetown, or by high frequency amateur radio.
Right.
When you went in, you basically surrendered your passport. When you went in, you surrendered your money. The radio room was only operated by a handful of people. And there were times when people would contact their families, but there was always somebody there monitoring the situation. Just kind of like when North Korean diplomats go overseas, there's always two of them together. Same thing with U.S. soldiers in missile silos. There's a no lone rule, and the idea is you're not going to
divulge.
You're not going to go against the rule knowing that you're being watched. Now, with that said, at the times when Jim Jones was not in Jonestown, the people loved Jonestown. They really did. They loved the community. They loved everything else. But when Jim Jones was there, they really did not want Jim Jones to be there.
So he just created that paranoid situation of fear. Is that's going, like, you hear about? There was, the deprivation.
Yeah.
And
not only that, he would read censored articles praising what was going on in Russia, defaming the United States. These broadcasts would go in day and night over the PA. Good luck trying to get any rest. You could hear it in the fields. You could hear it in the schools. You could hear it basically everywhere. There were weapons in the area. So if you basically tried to leave, you'd be leaving on foot and would most likely get lost in the jungle.
Right.
We talked about this before. The road to get from the airstrip at Port Katuma, which is where the defectors on the final day tried to leave from and were killed along with the congressman, and where current Congress lady Jackie Spears was shot 5 times, was a 45-minute drive over unimproved roads to get there. You'd get lost in the jungle. You'd get bitten by a snake or eaten by a wild animal.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to catch up on some comments. I was going through pictures, so I couldn't see comments.
So the environment was one where, you might be able to make a run into the jungle, and you might, but you're going to end up dying in the jungle. And not only that, but people that were suspected of leaving or having any malice were drugged. There were people that were part of the Red Brigade, or what we would consider the security team, that were armed and looking for people and making sure that people didn't escape. Because nobody, they couldn't afford for people in the outside world to know what was truly happening in Jonestown. This is an issue that myself and the sound engineer working on the restoration project, Joel Thomas, come at a disagreement with. He's of the belief that something like this can never happen again because we have things like the internet, We have things like cell phones, etc. I'm of the belief it certainly could happen again. It could certainly happen again in America. Having just recently driven through western Utah for 4 hours with no cell signal,
Well,
and
and
seeing
there's
areas
also
like this.
there are many cultures still
That are like this.
that I watched a great little. This is the Hasidic Jews. They did this on Netflix with this girl who left her community.
Oh
They
yeah,
didn't
and
have phones.
Hmm.
She
they'd
couldn't
have.
have a passport. She could never have her own identity. Everything was controlled. There are cultures that we live in, and this isn't just. It comes in. It's anywhere. This could be it could be your neighbors.
Hmm.
Think of those poor kids, you know, down
And
in
when they,
Paris, Southern California, where they were 13 children from 28 to like 1 year old, and they were just totally neglected and abused right in front of their neighbors in just modern suburbia. No one said anything. No one noticed. This can be happening anywhere.
right,
Exactly.
I do agree with you. Christola, again, remember, it was in the middle of nowhere. But they knew they had food. They knew they'd have education for their children, etc. There were, at the time when they were going down there, we
He
had just gotten
basically
out.
wasn't the way he was when he was down there.
Well, and
Well,
my initial point
no,
was, why weren't
well,
there red flags about where these people were headed?
Right.
Because
the question,
that's pretty scary to me that they weren't close to civilization, and that's
uh,
what interests
that
me.
that
This
that
information on
was
that.
that was kind of the point, because they were coming from a civilization that many of them had negative viewpoints of. When the moves actually happened, we're starting basically, in the 70s. So we're coming off of the end of Vietnam. We're coming in a period where we're still dealing with Black Panthers. We're still dealing with
Cold War
race riots,
initiative. Yeah.
Cold War, people being fearful of
Um,
the government. And, these people didn't look at it as going into the middle of nowhere, for the red flag side. They were going in the middle of nowhere intentionally to build something that was new, that was utopia. That was what they were sold on, and they were built on this utopian idea, having seen that the church had housed and provided for the poor, the soup kitchens, the dormitories for the homeless, etc.,
so
and
basically, the
believed it
red
was.
flags didn't go off because it was just like they were made to believe that what they had here, they were just going to go to a better place and have the same thing there.
Right, it might not have had all the same things like TV, etc., but that compared to what we were dealing with in the United States at the time, many of these people had been with the church long enough that they would go into it.
Okay, so Christola asked, wait a minute, you just said there was a threat, there was no threat of extradition, so why not be closer to a town or doctor or any authority?
Okay, so Christella, to start off, first of all, there were doctors, nurses, pharmacists in Jonestown. Even dentists that came would say that the teeth of the children were some of the best teeth he ever saw, because of the type of diet and the lacks of refined sugars didn't cause cavities with these kids. So that's part of it right there. There were doctors there. But the idea of being away from society as a whole was so that they could build something that was unique and special and utopian without outside influence. Now, just because I said that there were 45 minutes by road to Port Katuma, and about 30 miles from a place called Matthews Ridge, um, it they specifically were in the middle of nowhere so that they could be basically left alone. The only other people in the area were people that were mining. Yeah, I agree with Siren as well.
I do too. I
Uh,
do. There was no
and,
extradition Guyana, but it still had its laws.
right, but in Guyana, the people in Guyana, oh no, Cristola, you are wrong. They did not all drink the Kool-Aid. There are marks on some of the bodies that showed a needle mark right between the back of the shoulder blades, a spot that would be impossible for a human being to inject themselves. Also, both Anmore
I think she
and
means like the all like in the bigger picture, they all drank the
oh
Kool Aid.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
when going there, they all believe the same beliefs, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, they all did buy into the same belief that they were there to create a new society, one where there was racial equality, gender equality, and even though it was roughing it a little bit more, was going to be peace on earth. The only other people, like I was saying, in the area were people that are mining. If you go to Port Katooma nowadays, most of the places that are we buy gold, and I'm not talking pawn shop gold. I'm talking about places that were doing mining and things of that nature.
You
And
see,
they
now
were not
my
the.
biggest thing was is that the second I stepped off that plane, if they would have took my passport, I would have been like, get me the heck out of here. Bring
Oh, they
me
didn't
home.
take your. They didn't take your passport the moment you got off the plane. You see, you were already in the jungle by that point.
Oh well, let me tell you. Oh, I know that, Jason. I know it was a play on words. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's just so crazy to think of, honestly.
Yeah, it really is it really is crazy. But if you think about it, this is not the first time we've seen something like this. Heaven's Gate,
True.
Waco. I mean, this has happened. This has happened many a times. Hitler. Okay, what
Yeah.
it takes is a charismatic leader, and then a vanguard of supporters. And with that, once you have that, the
Bro.
sociological effect known as groupthink catches on and digs in. And so even if you know the right answer, you're going to go with the wrong answer because everyone around you is saying that the wrong answer is the right answer. Uh, the French philosopher Voltaire said, "It is dangerous to be right when society deems you to be wrong." And this is certainly
True.
a quote that is very important to think about in the case of Jonestown. Um, yes, I have seen these things, Matt. Um, when people talk about Jonestown being a medical experiment, they don't look at the situation that was right up the road. Well, not right up the road, but about 30 minutes by helicopter or so of another commune out there. It was led by a guy that was labeled a rabbi, but it was not a rabbi. It had nothing to do with Judaism. And he was very abusive towards the people too.
I don't think I think it was said that because according to like autopsies and that, Jim Jones didn't shoot himself, correct?
It is Nobody knows for sure if Jim Jones shot himself or not, but it is believed. We do know that the wound went in like this.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Jim Jones and Ann Moore were the only two people to be shot at Jonestown itself. The
Uh-huh.
people at Georgetown were killed by knife wound.
Now
The
they do
people that
actually have their autopsies.
Yeah. But Ann Moore took both the cyanide and Annie Moore took both the cyanide and shot herself. But the fact that she had actually had a letter penned out saying, "We died because you would not let us be free." Everybody else died first. Then then the security people in the inner circle killed themselves. The talks about gunshots. Well, we know that there had to be two.
Right.
because there were, Jim Jones and more were basically shot. And you can see if you're looking, which one are you looking at right
I'm
now?
looking at Jim Jones's.
So if you scroll down to toxicology,
Uh-huh.
okay,
Embalming injury. Cranial.
now it's actually very interesting because of the cyanide poisoning, when they found the bodies, whether you were African American or Caucasian, you were the same color. But Jim Jones, because he did not die of cyanide, was the only one that was a different color.
Okay,
Because cyanide,
toxicology reads the following tissues are submitted for toxicological examination: the stomach contents, spleen, liver, and kidney and lung.
right, so scroll down and see the drug records in there.
The summary.
Yeah, there should be a part that
Okay,
says
the
the
drug
drug
record.
levels.
Report toxicologist examination. All tissues submitted were petrified. The body was embalmed prior to autopsy. Neutral drugs, liver, none found. The following drugs were identified and
Quantified.
quantitated by gas chromatography.
Chromatography.
Okay, and UV. Yep, you can say that. Spectro.
UV spectrometry.
Okay. Well, these are big words, okay? And verified by mass spectrometry amounts well reports are in the milligrams per 100 grams per tissue.
Okay, so looking down this, and I'm looking at it on a smaller screen here, and I can barely read it, but we can see that there were barbiturates in his system, phenobarbital, first line. Okay, what's the one below it say?
I'm trying to see if I can't get it to zoom, but I can't. Okay, so chloroquine.
Okay, so that sounds like anti-malaria. But notice the body being embalmed and the fact that the body was sitting stagnant for so long is an important part of why some of these numbers might not be right. But you can definitely see the phenobarbital. That's why he was slurring in his final speech. Also, it should be mentioned that this was not the first autopsy. This is a common misconception. The autopsy pictures that you are looking at were done once the body was repatriated to the United States. The actual original autopsy was done in Guyana by Dr. I'm trying to remember his name. I want to say it's Matumbi or something of the sort. I know it starts with an M. He's the one who basically said that that you basically could not that they did not have the resources and needed help from the United States government for this kind of stuff.
Okay, I just want to say everybody can go back and maybe like rewatch if they want to fully read the autopsy reports, pause where need be. Did you want to do Anne's autopsy reports while we were talking about Anne and why the theory is about Jim's death?
Well, it's believed that Anne Moore was the last to die for a couple reasons. She took both the cyanide and shot herself. Okay, the part of the reason is that the higher leadership was all in one room, basically separate from the people that had died in the pavilion. Do we have a picture we can throw up of the pavilion?
I have the aerials.
No, aerials with the bodies.
Okay, you want the aerials with the bodies?
Yeah, warning people, this can get graphic.
Yes, might be a trigger warning right here. Let's see.
Yeah,
so these ones?
Let's see. Can you see the bodies?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, zoom in some more if you would. you can.
Oh.
Okay, so this group of bodies that you're looking at are all basically right around the central pavilion, which was used for stage performances, Jim Jones sermons, etc. Those are all right there. Okay, now one of the big things about this is the Jim Jones was not found there. He was ended up being brought there, but was not found there.
Okay. Now we
Neither
were
was Ann
talking
Moore.
about like doctors and stuff. That's why I kind of brought up the aerials because I remember when me and you were talking, you were discussing with me like the type of buildings that they had and like because I mentioned to you in our private conversations about like the format of the layout of the land that they had. Remember?
Yeah, so there was a group, there were dormitories, there was a piggery, there was a chicken shed, there was a lumber mill, a generator. There was something in the back there. You see that tower-like structure?
Okay, I'm going back.
Right up a little bit. I think it's right there, direct center. Yeah, right. Zoom in more right there.
It looks
There's
like
a
a crack in
tower.
the picture.
There's an area there that will look like a tower that was kind of built and abandoned. There you'll see from a lot of the pictures, water catch systems, 65-gallon drums. If you can get into that.
Okay.
Let me
I'll
see
just
if
see
I
what.
can.
Okay. Now you were also mentioning to me that they were gonna something about a project that's going on with the remake of
Oh
Jonestown
yes.
in a 3D version, so that way you could actually take a 3D virtual tour, possibly.
Yeah. So what is going
Tower.
on right now is how do I explain this? There is let me see. Hang on 1 second. Let me just pull this up first here. I'm looking at a different autopsy report from Jonestown right now. This one was of Carolyn Moore Layton, okay, who happened to be brought in. Cause of death was cyanide poison, embalmed in the advanced stages of postmortem decomposition with maggot infestation. Remember, this
Would
is
this be a
the
blue barrel that you were talking about?
zoom in.
Oh, right there.
Possibly. It's better if you go to the ground pictures where we can get close-ups of the dead bodies, and you will see the blue barrels.
Okay.
On the Jonestown Institute website, there are maps that have these buildings sketched out and labeled. But to answer your question, yes. Part of what we are trying to do now, with very few survivors left, and many of them have said that have spoken and said their piece so many times that they will not talk to normal people anymore. Part of it is because of things like MK Ultra. They don't want to hear the same cloak and dagger stuff when they were actually there for it. The last known basically public meeting was actually on Audible with Tim Carter and Rebecca Moore, but Tim Carter does not speak to the public anymore. What we're trying to do is we're trying to basically look at all the documents that were achieved through the Freedom of Information Act. As you saw, Stephanie, when I sent you some of them, it is very difficult or impossible to read many of them.
Oh yeah.
We are trying to basically work on that. The letter I showed you where Ann Moore was discussing suicide well before. See right there, up one, up. See the drawing.
Yeah,
Everything
this
I
one.
think. Yeah, I think everything is labeled there. If you zoom in on it.
It won't let me.
To your upper right, you see the thing to expand it. Try that. And now try and expand.
Whoa there, tiger. It told me that the photo was at its largest. See?
Yeah. Anyway, so
Like you're not getting no bigger.
so going through here, autopsy report from Carolyn Moore Layton, okay, who was Annie Moore's sister.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just going down to the paperwork here. So, in her body, we basically found, we have cyanide, okay, which is very easy to identify because of the color of the bodies. If you bring up the body pictures, you'll see it. But
Okay.
also mixed in with that, we have diphenhydramine, which everybody else knows as Benadryl. We have promethazine and chlorpromethazine, which are anti-nausea medications, and chloroquine, which again is an anti-malaria drug that was added in along with the cyanide. So basically, these other medications are were used for anti-nausea effects to basically help, so that there wouldn't be people throwing up and everything else. Didn't exactly work too well. But it kind of goes in it. Now, keep in mind that the toxicology examinations of the specimens were taken about 6 weeks after embalming.
Okay, I'm gonna do a trigger warning right here. We are gonna look at these at the body lift photographs.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, this is gonna get tough for people. When the bodies were brought out, they were brought out of Guyana, but they literally had to request snow shovels to be sent in from the United States to lift the bodies, because if they tried to do it by hand, the skin would.
Are you there? Hello? Oh, well, I think we lost him, guys. Let's just give him a second. Yeah, trigger warning. Let me pin that. Sorry, guys. I was trying to pull up pictures and I couldn't see. Let's go back and I will go through some comments real quick and we'll wait until maybe he comes back. He may have just hit a bad service for a second. Let's see, where are we at? So and when the people reach out, what would happen? Oh no, I know that. I know about the story. Okay. Oh, and it looks like he's back. So
Sorry,
conspiracy.
I don't know what happened there. Well,
just saying.
Crystal, there are many conspiracy theories to this. And yes, I agree with you. What is true is that pisses me off as well, that it was forced on the kids, and the kids did not know better than to run or anything of that nature. They had been through exercises before where they just basically drank Flavor Aid.
He dragged himself up to get through it. What are you getting at? Oh, the for his death.
Oh, Jim Jones was on a mix of drugs basically throughout the time. In fact, part of the reason why he had to leave California was that you could not identify.
Hey, Ginger.
That you could not hide from the rank and file anymore the fact that he was a drug addict. Now, because the autopsy on Carolyn Moore was so long after embalming, and the specimens were taken about 1 month after and about 2 weeks after embalming, they were still able to find the antihistamines, etc. But the cyanide was not recovered from Carolyn Moore's body. What validates the cyanide from the death is, and by the way, the doctor I couldn't remember the name of was Dr. Mutu. There was apparently the presence of significant amounts of cyanide in other bodies studied at Dover Air Force Base, as well as if you actually look at the photos of the dead bodies, you'll notice that they're all off color. They all
Uh-huh.
kind of have a, whether they were African American or Caucasian or Asian, it does not matter. They were on, they were very true, Out of the Shadows. Very true. Heavy on the barbiturates, other drugs as well, definitely. But the cyanide was very easily identifiable, and you can identify it even
I'm
in
gonna
the
go ahead and pull up some more.
pictures.
I'm gonna go back to the pictures before we lost you, but I wanted to
Yeah.
put up the trigger warning.
So we saw
Um,
these people living and living happily. Those are people pulling up the bodies. It might not be in the airlift all right. I don't know if you can zoom in on that. There we go. Okay. So if you look, all the bodies are bloated, of course, because they've been out rotting in the thing. But you notice how they all have a weird shade of color to them.
I'm
That's
gonna try
the
to flip
effect.
through them rather
Huh?
quickly. I want to flip through these rather quickly as it is kind of really graphic.
It's extremely graphic. Um,
Okay.
part of us, it is extremely graphic, but it's just like looking at photos of the death camps of Nazi Germany. It's horrible to look at, but and I can't believe I'm going to quote this right now, but in the pavilion in Jonestown, there was a sign above the pavilion that said, "Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat." We have to remember these pictures, no matter how sad they make us, and no matter how sick to our stomachs they make us. We have to remember them because we have to not allow an incident like this to occur again. We have to look out for behavior of people trying to be a charismatic leader.
Is that
When we,
tower I think you were talking about?
huh?
Is that tower you were talking about?
No, that's the tower right there.
And what was this tower?
That tower was designed to look kind of like a radar tower and like a communication tower, but it really wasn't. I can't remember the exact purpose of that tower off the top of my head, but it was not what it was viewed. It was, the community believed that it would look like a radar tower and provide additional benefits. But as you can see, if you hold up on this picture here, you can see there's a power lines set up.
Mm-hmm.
They had running power. There were showers. The one rule was no eating in any of the cottages or dormitories, but that's because of mice and other things. But you can see they had running power. They had a PA system. They had an amateur radio set up. They had lights. They had electric guitars. Now, I would like to mention that Marson Jones here for a moment. Marson Jones, even though she knew that she was going to die that day and knew basically what was coming when she knew the congressman was coming, is really an unsung hero that is not talked about enough. And the reason why is even though she loved the children. That was her biggest joy in life, was the children of Jonestown. I don't know if we have a picture of Marceline.
I can go ahead and get to there.
Because of Marceline Jones,
Not that.
Stephen Jones, Tim Jones, Jim Jones Jr. all survived Jonestown. She specifically gave Stephen instructions to not antagonize her father or his father for fear that he would hold them back from going to the basketball game against the Guyanese national team, which, by the way, they lost. But she sacrificed herself and got her children out of there, and that was amazing.
Okay, so
Oh
I'm
no,
gonna go.
no, they knew that we have a copy of the telegrams between Leo Ryan and and Jonestown. And the visit to Jonestown with Leo Ryan, the congressman, and the NBC reporters, the film crew, etc., was arranged through the attorney for Jonestown. The people at Jonestown were all basically groomed to believe, to say certain things and talk about the heaven on earth that Jonestown was. So yes, they knew they knew the congressman was coming, and they prepped the people. And the reason why the congressman knew something was up was a note was passed to one of the NBC crew, thinking it was a congressman, saying, "Get us out of Jonestown."
Okay, the
And
name
he
that you
attempted
said to look for was Marcella what?
Marcelin Jones. That was Jim Jones's actual wife.
Where did that go? Oh, okay. Right here. Marcelin. Marcelin. It was what?
Marcelin
Jones?
Jones.
Jones. Okay, here we go. Jones. Well, there was a lot of Jones there. Holy. Marcelin. Here we go.
Okay, the Marcelin Jones. There's other pictures of her without going into that the file you're in. Those might be property of CHS.
These ones?
California's, yeah, because those are, yeah, those ones may be. But
Those
there's other
memorial?
pictures there's other pictures you can find of Marcelin Jones if you just Google an image. You can
Okay.
easily find one.
I can go ahead and do that. Let me get off with here. Marcelin Jones. Okay. Go ahead and continue. I'll do that real quick and I'll pull up a photo of her.
Okay. But so many people basically, once the news came and people started leaving, the first two people, other people started leaving Jonestown. Most of the people that left happened to be white, which Jones used to show a racial divide and actually get it in. But the visit with Leo Ryan, was arranged between Ryan, the Temple's attorneys, Mark Lane and Charles Gary, and they came with a NBC News crew. But Vernon Gosney, who passed on this year, he was at Jonestown, then became a cop, and was also a member of the LGBTQ community. Passed a note to the news reporter Don Harris, thinking that was Ryan, saying, "Dear Congressman, Vernon Gosney and Monica Bagby, please help us get out of Jonestown." Harris passed that note to Ryan after the reception, and Harris and the other media members were informed that the temple couldn't provide lodging for them in Jonestown, so they had to go back to Port Katuma that night. But Ryan was there. Ryan felt that he could basically get anyone out that he wanted because he was a U.S. congressman, and there was a shield of people. Type in Marcelin Jones, Jonestown, and you'll pull it up.
Oh, I was already looking at him.
Yeah, so Marcelin Jones loved the children. She got the
I
people
had
out.
some right here.
Vernon Gosney died this year, so he's no longer available for us to talk to, but he was the one who actually passed the note, and he survived the shooting at the airstrip.
Right here.
Yeah, that's Marcelin right there.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the number of people that left, they had to get a second plane. But Jim Jones had dispatched a group of people. They say by Temple dump truck, but if you look at it, it's really more of a flatbed that was attached to a trailer. And they came in with shotguns and basically shot the place up. As I said, Jackie Spears, the current congresswoman, or the current congress lady from the state of California, who was Leo Ryan's aide at the time, was shot 5 times and lived.
What do you mean, Cristola? But you guys are wrong. I would think so too. Is that it could have been just used for a lookout to see if people were maybe coming in and out or something like that.
Well, actually, there was really no need for that. Um, the Jonestown Medical Center was open to locals that needed medical care as well, number one. Number two, the jungle was so thick you couldn't see more than 5 feet in front of you. You'd literally, to go into there, you'd have to have a machete and you'd be working to clear a path over and over and over again. And finally, there were armed guards that were always patrolling Jonestown.
I almost
You
feel
know,
like to go on this whole logical sense, this whole thing isn't logical in ways.
it isn't, but that's the power of suggestion. That's the power of what can happen when you have basically a narcissistic sociopath that believes and is charismatic. People would never have thought that Hitler would have been able to do the things that he did, but he did. Look throughout history. We can point to countless examples of times when things look totally illogical, but yet they still happen.
Very true. Very true. My
Why else real besides radio? Of course, they had to watch out. No, the radio tower, because of the frequencies that were used for the radio. When you're using a high frequency amateur radio, the antenna is actually mounted horizontally and not vertically. It's not like VHF, because what you're using is the atmosphere to bounce the signal off of the ionosphere and back down, and so it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, and that's how it's not line of sight like a normal VHF radio.
Right, correct. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the whole Georgetown and stuff. We can, I don't know
we were
if you
talking
want.
Jonestown, not Georgetown.
Oh my goodness, Jonestown. I'm sorry.
Georgetown is the capital of Guyana, and what happened there was a coded message sent from Jonestown to locals. Cristola, locals were able to get there. There were locals that were miners, etc., that had transportation because they were mining ore and whatnot, and there was a road to get there. It's not like, if you see from the aerials, you can even see the road in and out, and you can even see the welcome sign saying "Welcome to Jonestown Agricultural Community." Let me see if I have one here that I can show you. This would have been.
I would like to also play that speech, the original copy of that tape of the recordings.
Okay, let's do it. But before we do so, let me just finish the thing on Georgetown. So,
okay.
The message came to basically commit suicide as a revolutionary act. It wasn't suicide; it was a revolutionary act. I know it's just a difference in wording, but that was how they looked at it. The revolutionary, they did not have poison at Georgetown. So they said, well, what do we do about this? And the message came back in Kilo, November, India, and faded off, to which Sharon Amos, the basically head of Lama Gardens, was there with her with her 3 children and another temple member. She wanted the other temple member to do it, who was a vet who I can't recall the name of. He refused to do it. She stabbed both of her younger kids, and the oldest daughter and her simultaneously cut each other's throat.
Okay, so see a road? What's that? See a road.
Yeah, there were roads in and out, but the roads were not concrete roads. These are dirt roads that were passable by things like a 2.5-ton military truck, tractors, things of that nature. We're not talking about you were not able to fly down these roads like a highway.
You
And
definitely had to
the
take your time, I'm sure, at points.
right, and there are videos of it. But if you were if you think about this, Crystal, if you were going to escape
Actually, I showed that
to
in an aerial.
if you were going to escape and use the road as your way out, and you were found to be missing, the first thing that would happen would be a motorized vehicle coming down that road with search parties. You'd have to go into the bush. You'd have to go into the jungle. Or you'd be found, and who knows what would have happened to you.
So I think this one would be your best picture of like the road going in. Wouldn't that be?
Which one?
The one, because it was asked about the one long road going into Jonestown.
Yeah, there is one. There,
I may not be actually showing it. Of course, I'm not. I'm looking at it myself while I'm leaving you guys out. How about that? Here you go.
there were there's what views to be a couple roads. Okay, some of them are not actually roads; they are paths. But if you look, you can see welcome. If you look through the pictures, for example, welcome to the People's Temple, Jonestown. And it's kind of, there, you'll see that there's different signs. You'll also see that there's kind of like a guard shack at the beginning of it. Part of the reason why there were walkways, which from the aerials look like roads and are made out of wood for the most part, was because being the rainforest during the rainy season, you'd get bogged down in the mud if there wasn't some kind of way to walk through the area. So, I mean, if you look at the maps here, you'll see that even although you can't put it up here, Getty Images has a picture of the road. The road actually goes through the town completely and goes out the other end.
So like this main one?
It is one road, but it doesn't dead end. Nope, that's not the main road.
No?
It's going to be a straight road.
Okay.
With a let's see, go.
See if we can get a better picture.
The best picture. Hang on, right there. That looks like it could be. That's it right there. On
okay. So this.
What would be the top of the picture? The top.
That one?
Looks to be the main road. Yes.
Oh.
Now the other stuff that you're seeing, that you're saying you see all those cottages?
Yeah.
Then there's East House, the West House, and everything else that goes through here. And
the road. I was looking at. Okay. Keep going.
So yeah, that's what we're looking at there.
Okay. Now, there was one that I was specifically looking at when I asked you about everything. About, like I said, that it was very interesting on the way of the layout of the whole town. Let me see if I can find it. Because I thought it was pretty interesting the way that they had it laid out. And you were telling me, yeah, because of the different buildings were for different things.
Right. So they had their own lumber mill there so that they could basically build houses, and houses could be erected there very quickly. They came up with an ingenious system of basically assembling kit pieces to basically put those in. We have here up a little bit right there, we have farmland area to the left of those cottages that you see there. The pavilion is down in the main center of the town, right over there. You can see all the different buildings basically around, and then there's going to be a group of 3 houses or so by themselves. Those would be the east and west houses. when the 3D map comes out, and this is one really that Joel Thomas would be better equipped to answer, because he has viewed these pictures from the air, from the ground, from every angle in order to build the maps.
Uh-huh.
He would be the best person I can think of, other than Mac or Fielding McGee. That would we all call him Mac, us that know him. That could basically identify. All right, you see those three houses by themselves?
Um,
Right there, off to the side, right picture.
right here.
Yeah. So you see, there's that little road there that leads into the town from those, and that's where basically the pavilion is, and towards the center. There's also
right there.
the daycare facilities.
Where would
Yeah,
the daycare facilities be? Which ones would those be?
For that one, I would defer to Joel on.
Oh, okay.
It's. Let me see if I can find a quick schematic of Jonestown.
It's just interesting the way that they had like the layout of the land and the way that it was all set up.
Well, if you recall, okay, I have a better map here. Give me 1 second so I can
If you want to
zoom in on this. It's on a different screen here, but
okay. Oh, I see you. I see you. Hey. Sorry. You're so
back. If you take the comment down, you can see me, but no big deal. If you want to just do
yeah. Okay, let's see.
Okay. So
okay.
If you type into I'm just using Bing here, not saying I prefer one over the other, but if you just type in to Bing Jonestown map Guyana, and you'll see there, the first thing you'll see is a map of Guyana, and then immediately to the right of that, you'll see Jonestown, Guyana, and below that, there's the schematics. And the schematics show you where the dormitories were located, where the pavilion was. You can see exactly everything. So if you bring up that map again, with this in front of me, I can kind of help the process a little bit.
Okay, so this one?
There.
Okay, or no, the bigger one. There was a better one. Let me see. Let me find this.
So the cottages would have been basically. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, hold that picture. Okay, so it's
this one.
Yeah, this one's a little bit off angle, but you can see. I believe those are marked as recreation tents. Huh?
I said, hold on. Kind of there was a bigger, better one that I found. With this one. This one. There we go.
706x547. Hang on a second. Okay, so so from this angle, it looks a little bit different than everything else. You'll see coming off of that road, the dormitories are those. No, that's. Hang on, I'll take care of that.
Okay.
I
was just wondering what that was. Okay, accessory.
If you can go back to that screen with that image.
Okay, hold on. Yep.
Okay, so the dormitories are the 5 buildings right there that you're looking at. Those are. And
this is where the elderly would be?
No, the elderly, many of the elderly would be around the medical facility. Or they'd be, okay, so that's the white building right there to the side of that.
It's the mess hall.
Wait, move your mouse over the
this
thing
one?
so I can see. Yeah, that one's the pavilion.
Okay,
the two blue buildings next to that would be the education facility. The one that below that is a radio room.
With the tower.
Yeah, with what appears to be a tower next to it, but it's a horizontal thing. Playground is directly. Let me just look at this. Should be from this angle. Let me see, just rotate it. The playground was basically right across that road on the other side of the road. If you keep moving to the right, that patch over there. No, down.
Right here.
Down. Yeah, that patch area down there.
Uh-huh.
The basketball court was located up by the cottages.
Okay, so back
So
up
if you
here.
zoom, yeah, there's a basketball court right there. That board that you're looking at right there.
Right there.
I can't see your mouse, but yes, right there. That's a basketball court.
Okay.
The kitchen was located beneath the playground on the other side of the playground. That would be where the kitchen facilities are.
Right there.
Let me see here. Which room is that? Can you back it up a second?
Yep.
So I can just get my bearing. From the pavilion, it would have been on the other side. You see, there's like four buildings that kind of. You see those four buildings that make a square? The blue building, the one with the blue roof
Right
at
here.
the bottom.
Yeah, these four right here.
Yeah, the blue building next to that, and the building, see the blue building right there?
Yep.
You see the one with the gray right below it? That was the kitchen facility, and so was the blue building.
Okay, these two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So those were the kitchen facilities. There's a garden area that was not shown in this picture. The West houses aren't shown in this picture. They had a soap factory. Let's see what else we can see from this picture. There was a bathroom just that built actually what you thought was a radio tower behind the pavilion.
That was a bathroom?
Yeah, that's a bathroom.
Oh. So they all like basically shared a bathroom or two?
Well, for purposes of shower, there was a communal set of showers. Yes. Let me see if I can identify. The showers were located right next to the kitchen. There was a smokehouse. The sawmills. Let me just find it here on my paperwork here. The sawmills. If you find those two buildings there, the garage. Let's see, TR. The tool room and the garage are those two white buildings. See the two white buildings to the right of the blue building? The two blue buildings, right about where your mouse is. That's
right here.
the supply. Yeah, that's the supply room. That building next to it is the garage and tool room. Let's see. The well you may be able to see if you back up. It goes on the road that leads out of the dormitories. So let's see. Dormitories are there. So if you follow that road up, see the road that kind of goes up that way. There's a few houses up in that upper left corner.
Okay, yep, right here.
Yeah, over there. Those are the east house. And that's also where the well location was. The well location is that little spot to the other side of the east house on that road.
They'd also keep their guests there too.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if anybody were to come in, you couldn't be in town. You'd be on the outskirts of town.
Right. The east house was for guests. The west house was where Jim Jones himself lived, and where
over there
members. No. Those are the cottages.
Where did this over here? This lonely old little house right there.
That is, I believe, a bathroom.
That is a bathroom?
That's a bathroom, and then there's two more that are further out. You can see those buildings see that little road thing right there? That's a brick factory and a soap factory.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, okay. So then, enough with that. Let's see. Let me see. We are making our own. I don't mean what's going on. To make our own. I don't think y'all are being. I hope y'all don't think I'm being disrespectful to your guest, but me and Justin can take this up later. We have a difference in opinions. Hey, and that's absolutely fine. Just like I said at the beginning, and we all have our own opinions on the situations, and we are only going based on what we know, as of right now. So let's just have a nice, respectful chat.
One of the things too, though, like we mentioned earlier on, is that there were people, they're malnourished. They're dealing with being sleep deprived in a very fear-based dogma. Similar
being woken
to
up with constant fears that their community was being raided,
attacked, or whatever. Like they're always on, and then at the same token, their utopia is not working. So what better way to control it when things are this is very similar. You hear this a lot in situations where a big leader goes out of control. Is this not that I'm saying they all drink Kool-Aid, but I'm just saying they'll start changing. Instead of preaching the goodness, they end up jumping to the other side because, like you mentioned, he's a psychopath who basically is only about himself. What it really boiled down to. Correct?
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is you are correct that, ladies, you are correct in the comments that if you know how to drive, you can get out. But you just think the keys are going to be left with the vehicle? I mean, these are things that would have to be checked out. These are things, it was not easy. You're talking about November in basically in equatorial area. So it's hot, it's wet. You'd be without food. You need water to get to anywhere of importance. You'd probably be found along the way. People did try and escape, and
they had their children with them too.
Right, and they couldn't get the children out.
Most of these people had children. Mm-hmm. How many children died at Jones in
over 300.
Massacre? How many people total?
900. Total over 900.
Yeah. So for 900. every two adults, there's basically one child, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially. And not including the single, take out the amount of single people. So we're talking, these are people with children.
Right. And that's another important.
That's what they did. They went after people they got them in a position where you cannot run away with your babies.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How are you going to run? How are you going to run away?
And when the announcement came over the radio or the PA, it didn't sound stressed out. They asked everyone to please report to the pavilion. And if you queue up Q042, you can hear that the children are the first ones to basically be poisoned. As a parent, and I address this to the parents that are here, as a parent, if you watch your children die in front of you, forget how. You watch your children and know that you
bubbling at the mouth and convulsing. Let's talk about it. Let's be real.
But your mission on this earth is over. Your job was to basically watch out for your posterity, and your posterity is dead in front of you. You have no more reason to live. And the people that survived Jonestown really did die that day, and that day every day of their lives.
The survivor's guilt that you hear about, we're talking, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, there's been a lot with it. That's part of the reason why why so many of them had PTSD. And yes, Matt, armed guards too. When they called for the pavilion, armed guards were surrounding the pavilion. So you're already in the pavilion area. The armed guards are around there. Where are you going to run?
And then wait, what about those armed guards? Did they just go ahead? Okay, well, everybody's dead. I guess we'll just drink this shit too. Like what?
Pretty much, because there was a vanguard there. They were diehards. And if you listen to the tape, which I know Stephanie's pulling up right now, which is about to go on here.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I got the right one. I always find the wrong one.
Q042.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that it's.
But when you listen to this tape, in order to understand what happened that day, you need to listen to this tape, because the congressman was almost stabbed in Jonestown, which is why he decided to leave when he did, by a guy named Ujara, who's mentioned in the tape. But there's only one person, and
I found a
Stephanie,
video. I found a
it's fine.
video of it. Let me know if this will work. I got this video.
I'm sure it will. But
Okay.
real quick, there's only one person who dissents to the idea of the suicide, and you'll hear it. It's a straight example, if you took sociology and psychology, of groupthink.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and hit play. We'll know if it's the right video if it starts out how very much I've loved you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about 42 minutes, 46 minutes, something like that.
44.
Yeah.
Listen to the whole thing.
How very much I've loved you.
Can you guys hear it?
How very much I've tried
Yes.
my best to give you a good life. But in spite of all of that I've tried, a handful of our people with their lives have made our life impossible. There's no way to detach ourselves from what's happened today. Not only we're in a compound situation, not only are there those who have left and committed the betrayal of the century. Some have stolen from others and they're in pursuit right now to kill them because they stole their children. And we are sitting here waiting on a powder keg. I don't think this is what we want to do with our babies. I don't think that's what we had in mind to do with our babies. It was said by the greatest of prophets from time immemorial, no man takes my life from me, I lay my life down. So to sit here and wait for the catastrophe that's going to happen on that airplane, it's going to be a catastrophe. Almost happened here. Almost happened. The congressman was nearly killed here. But you can't steal people's children. You can't take off with people's children without expecting a violent reaction. And that's not so unfamiliar to us either. Even if we were Judeo-Christian, if we weren't communists, the world, the kingdom suffers violence, and the violence shall take it by force. If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace.
Okay, I don't want to get a copyright, so let's add some commentary.
Actually, yeah. First of all, that's in the public domain. That tape was acquired through the Freedom of Information Act and was released by the United States government. So we're okay on the copyright thing.
Okay.
But right there, you can hear the crowd cheering around him and going ahead, with the idea of this. Now, think about this. You're surrounded by 900 people that are basically your family. These people, they were basically told to give up their families, and that their families were the members of their community. How hard is it to be the dissenter? And that's why another hero, even though she died and failed at the task, was the one person who's going to stand up here. Her name's Christine Miller. And you'll hear her referred to as Christine, but her name's Christine Miller, who basically pleads for an airlift to Russia.
On that note, though, here's the part that's really hard to take in, like a lot of these cases that we talk about. There were a lot of people that really wanted out. And so this is where we talk about, this wasn't just suicide. There were a lot of murders here too. And
yeah.
And that's where it comes down to a whole, I don't know what the whole percentage is, but this could be, from what I understand, this could be up to 20 to 40% of the people were actually murdered, injected.
Yeah, there were definitely syringes with needles found and marks in the back. Most of the people did take the poison willingly. Some of them may have thought that it was just another loyalty test. People were definitely shot at the airport. Those people were killed some of them had no relation to the church. You can look up the NBC footage of the actual shooting because the NBC cameraman was filming at the time and his camera drops. Some people were injected. And when you look at these pictures, when we saw those pictures of the bodies, one of the things we talked about before was that there were bodies on tops of bodies on tops of bodies. The children were found underneath the parents and the other people, which means the children were the first to die, and the mothers and fathers, basically, when they took the poison, cuddled up with their child and died on top of them, and then more bodies and more bodies.
I apologize. I just have to step out. I have to still be a mom, go to bed.
Actually, I got to get to bed myself. As it is 1 o'clock with me. I think what I'm gonna do is you said that I can't be copyright struck because this is open to the public.
Yeah, the actual audio commentary, which you can.
I want to get the actual audio commentary that you originally sent me. The original.
Then what you can do is give me 1 second. Go to the Jonestown Institute page again.
Okay.
I think if you link it, as long as it's get from a YouTube.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it down in the commentary or in my bio.
Right. Towards the end, though, you'll hear them lining up for the children and the older children being told to comfort the younger children.
Okay.
And the
You want me to quickly go to that? I can.
Yeah. Let's go to that so that people can understand. That the kids were the first to.
Yeah, and then that's where some of my mindset is. How long was it before they found the bodies too?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. How long was it before they found the bodies? Because quite a bit of them were bloated and discolored.
Well, first of all, that would happen in an equatorial climate. But remember that line that I said I found that was missing from the FBI transcripts and the other transcripts?
Yes.
So the GDF saw what happened, and Dwyer was with the state. He was actually given a medal for basically saving and caring for the bodies until rescue groups arrived. The first people to roll in were the Guyanese Defense Forces, but that took them time to mobilize as the nearest base was at a place called Matthews Ridge, and come in there and secure it. These were not like the professional army we have now. These were more like conscripts, and
so it wasn't necessarily any forensic. They were more like, oh gosh, what do we have this many people, we got to take care of this here and now. So some of the forensic analysis was never going to be taken care of.
Oh, there was no forensic analysis.
What you see is not necessarily what took place. So the assumptions that need to be looked at. And that's where I come back with
very true, Costola. Sorry.
That's right. I'm always going to push back. I believe that what I truly feel is it wasn't his words that inspired taking the Kool-Aid. I feel very strongly that he was getting, he had his, in I guess the most appropriate terms in like our lifetime, he had his own SS guards that were going to sit there and take these people down. As he as said fit, and do because I think he was getting a pushback, and like you said, that's how I feel strongly because that's some of what I've seen and what I looked into. I think he was getting full on like huge pushback, and this is what took place.
He did get pushback, and the people that assassinated the congressman came back with what they would refer to as a 1,000-yard stare. But there were only a few people really left with guns, bows, whatever you want to consider a weapon, because a good chunk of them were sent out to kill Ryan and the defectors. When they came back, basically everybody was reinforced, and those people basically just killed a bunch of people. They're not feeling a soul inside of them. They just basically murdered a bunch of people. You think they'd have any objection with killing more? It's not like they came back and started weeping. And that's the other thing is the GDF. There were GDF people on the field, but they considered this to be American on American violence. So they dropped their guns and ran. And that was reported back to Jim Jones. That was the line that I found in the tape that nobody else had found before me in the years that this tape has been out.
Okay. I'm
and-
gonna go ahead and play the part that you wanted played with the kids. If
Yeah.
that's okay. Let me see. All right.
No business
This is
coming.
gonna
I
be
told him not to come.
Trigger warning, guys, please. If it what my Crystal, if you could put trigger warning in the chat. Yeah.
Die with respect. Die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony. There's nothing to death. It's like Max said, it's just stepping over in another plane. Don't be this way. Stop this hysterics.
Oh,
This is not the way for people who are socialists and communists to die. No way for us to die. We must die with some dignity. We will have no choice. Now we have some choice. You think they're going to allow this to be done and allow us to get by with it? Must be insane. Children, it's just something to put you to rest. Oh, God. Mother, please. Mother, please. Don't do this. Lay down your life with your child, but don't do this.
So I'm guessing that's somebody probably fighting the whole thing, the whole process that he's talking to.
Free at last.
All right. I just caught that part. Free at last. Okay, guys. So there's that. What were we talking about when you wanted that played?
Well, the point is that they basically dose the children first. You know, as a parent, and I'm not a parent, but
You're a great uncle.
Thank you, Margie. You are a parent. If you watched your child die in front of you and you did nothing to stop it, would you have any reason to live?
Oh God, no. I've had this conversation many times. If something ever happened to my son, no.
Exactly.
We just talked about this the other night, actually.
We did, didn't we? Yeah,
we did.
That's the point. By killing the children first, it took away any last will of the adults to live. And the seniors, well, they're not really able-bodied in the first place. And the big threat was they're going to parachute on us. They're going to torture our children. They're going to torture our seniors, which is part of the tape we skipped over. You know, people were scared of what was going to come in from the outside and what was going to happen to them. You know, I mean, look at what we've done in the past, waterboarding, etc. What information are they going to try and pull out of them, even if they don't have any information? They're going to take those children away from you anyway, because you're cuckoo.
Well,
so you know, you're going to lose your child anyway. But your children at this point are already lining up to die. And now it's your turns and the seniors' turns and everybody else, and work it down from there. And the final people to die were, you know, Ann Moore, Jim Jones, and the Vanguard.
But he was a pussy. He shot himself. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. He shot himself.
He did shoot himself, and so did Ann Moore. Ann Moore took poison and shot herself. But let me ask you.
Oh yeah, she started feeling how much the poison hurts, and then she shot herself.
Well, that's speculation. We can't say for sure on that.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, I gotcha,
Take one for the whole team. If this is your team, be a coach.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, many people believe that the reason why he did take the easy way out was this was supposed to be a painless death, but watching people seizing, foaming at the mouth, having convulsions, falling on the ground, going into seizures, etc., does not sound like a peaceful way to die to me, does it to you? He was a pussy. He did take the easy
Are you
way out.
asking me? Like,
Well, I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but yeah, I mean, it does not sound like an easy way out, and definitely taking a gunshot to the head, where you're basically.
It beats suffering the whole
but
poisoning.
someone has to do it, though. That's the difference. Someone has to take the shot.
He could,
So
well,
it's like
the
when you
angle.
shoot yourself and then you watch each other shoot each other with like how many guns that they had. I don't know.
Well, they had,
He's that apparent.
they had several guns, but most, like I said, a lot of the guns were deployed to the airstrip, and once they found out, remember, he prophesized that there was going to be someone on the plane that was going to shoot down the plane, and that the congressman was going to die, and then news comes back during that tape saying that the congressman has been shot and is dead.
Right.
Again, faith healings, everything else, the viewpoint
Oh,
of a
within
prophet.
their whole prophecy deal, right?
Right. So now, as soon as they hear the congressman's dead, you hear a lady go, "It's all over now." And here, we're looking right now at the original tape filmed by the NBC crew of them boarding the aircraft. Now,
So
one
you
person,
can't call that manipulation. They shot the congressman. He created the whole thing.
right? Well,
That is not.
and hang on, there's a plant in this image that you don't see. A
Yeah.
gentleman by the name of Larry Layton, who was on board the small aircraft, actually had a gun. He was first by the congressman, but they didn't find the gun. And he did attempt to discharge it, and he ended up getting sentenced to life in prison, but he was paroled in California. His name's Larry Layton. He was a Jonestown zealot, and when he wanted to get on the truck, the other Jonestown people were suspicious of his reason, and they had good reason for it. That's the main plane that was going to go out, and you're going to see there's going to be a vehicle coming through. Now, keep in mind, this is the actual cameraman holding the camera, and these people are told to board, and they're all, you see, they're not taking it slow. They're trying to get on the, they're not necessarily running, but they're moving.
They're wanting to get out of there. That's what they're wanting to do.
Yeah. But because there were so many people, they had to wait at the airstrip to get another plane in there.
Okay.
Now, if we watch just a couple more seconds, you see we got everybody coming and lining up to get in the plane. And then we're gonna see the tractor.
Mm-hmm.
Now that guy with the gun that you see there is either Guyanese police or Guyanese military. I believe Guyanese police.
Is he part of the shooting?
No, he's on the far right, but no. Once the shooting started, it was considered American, and the Guyanese got the hell out of there.
Oh, okay.
This wasn't their war, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be shooting them.
Mm. There's the tractor, and you can see the camera's already basically on the ground. And that was it. They had shot the cameraman. The cameraman fell.
Yeah.
And that's original footage.
Right. And I do know that there is actually a full copy out there. I will have Jason send me the links to that also, and I think it's like a 15-minute video. And I will.
Christola, no, I'm not a parent. All I have is a fur baby. I know it's not the same, but I've never had the benefit or the gift of having a child or being married or any of that. So if you're going to say I do not know what it feels like to be a parent, you're exactly right. I can only try and empathize and try and put myself in those shoes, but I do not know exactly what it feels like to be a parent. I can only imagine now taking away somebody's child. You know, a parent is supposed to die before their child. That is the way it's supposed to be. When it's the other way around, it's ultimately destructive.
Jason Crystal's a really good friend of mine too. Like she's all heart. She's a mother. She has almost a basketball team of children. I always joke with
That's
her.
awesome.
Yeah, and
That's
a
awesome.
huge spread. And she's been with her husband since they were kids. Not kids. I
That's
mean, they were adult enough to have children. But she's amazing. And so just so you know, like she's someone I do really care about. And
oh
thank you
no,
for being respectful back.
oh
Uh,
no worries, no
I
worries.
think I
And
think
Crystal and I
what
have
Crystal was
always
trying
gotten
to
along
say.
up until this point, and we still get along. I mean, it's okay to have different opinions. I'm just going off of the straight facts and the documents, the
that
thousands of
you that
pages of
you that you
documents
have
I've read.
researched in your format, right?
Right,
But
exactly.
you're also okay with other opinions.
Right. And I encourage everybody to basically take a moment, whenever you get a chance, if you are interested in the topic, and go to the Jonestown Institute. They have so many pages of information. Stuff is still getting uploaded that has not been seen by the public all the time. Research it yourself. Don't use the above top secret sites and everything else. Go with the stuff that's actual real fact and that has been recovered. The FBI, the tapes that were recovered by the FBI, the actual paperwork, for example, the letter Ann Moore wrote about the revolutionary suicide that they planned months before. Read all this yourself with your own eyes. Make your own decisions on what you believe to be true. But before you just jump in and read, something off the internet, start with the original materials. And that's really what the mission that myself, uh, Joel, um, Fielding McGee, Rebecca Moore, who run the Jonestown Institute, are trying to do is save and preserve these documents and make sure that they're in a format so people don't rush to judgment and people can read with their own eyes, hear with their own ears exactly what happened in Jonestown. They can hear tapes of the faith
Uh-huh.
healings. They can hear tapes of all these things, and come to try and understand it in any way that they can do it themselves. Um, I encourage this. The only warning I give you is that you might go down the rabbit hole like I did. And remember, I started studying this and started. My first articles were published in 2008, I believe, and I'm still working on it to this day. It's one of those things that catches you like a black hole past the event horizon and sucks you in. So just
On that
be
note,
aware
though,
of that.
Jason, here's what I'm going to say too, because your mind fires a lot like mine. It's like it's kind of like, oh yeah, like yes, go. So sometimes in this kind of format,
I
it
agree.
can it can come across a little bit like scattered
Yeah.
possibly, and to just for your own integrity, like for your because without, I mean, dude, if there's somebody I'm like, dude, if there's a friend in my world, I'm like, hey, Jason, who am I gonna call? Jason. And if I don't know anything about it, he's gonna find out. Like he will figure it out for me. And so if this, this is something, this is kind of like the first. This is Stephanie. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is
Uh-huh.
like a first little jump into this, and kind of just seeing what kind of like feedback we get. So we want you guys to leave comments, ask the questions. If you have an issue with anything that's been said, like, let's dive into it together. Let's do this. I think that would be great. I think there's a
Right.
lot we can go to.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and
And then,
I,
like, there's so many different perspectives to look at. I mean, and everybody, like I said at the beginning, everybody has their own theories and everybody has their own opinions as to what it is. Okay, can y'all answer Siren's question? He's been waiting for a while. What
can
was
somebody
that?
help me with the question?
No, you're good, Christella. What was Siren's question? I guess I miss it?
We talked
I
about
missed it.
we did it earlier, I thought.
I thought we did it
Uh,
earlier when he asked about that.
And I
But
will
I
say
wasn't sure if we hit his point though, because it was a little bit like there's a lot of ways you could have dived into that.
Right.
right. One little thing while you're finding the question. We are looking for people to help us go through these thousands of pages of documents that we still have not read, because there are tens of thousands of pages. Some of them are
Let me see.
almost illegible, and these documents are going
I
to be
can bring up
lost to
some of those.
history.
I can bring up some of those documents so that way we can show how they are illegible.
You're right, yeah. Show some of those documents. There's other documents that we just haven't had a chance to review. There is so much information on this. It is impossible for one person to basically read them all. That's why we have one person dedicated. We have an international effort going on to preserve the history while there are still living people from the event around. The idea of having one of them
Yes.
see the
Nope.
3D model where the dead bodies are implanted in the model, that's not exactly what they want to see. But we need to make sure that we have the information right, the facts right, for
Okay.
for future researchers and historians to look at.
I mean,
Well,
there are a lot of conspiracy theories. I know Stephanie, she has to go to bed here soon, so
Here, just scroll down to the hard to read stuff. Let's see
yeah,
some
I'm
of
going to go
those.
down to 32 where we were looking at the. So this is what we were saying, you know, a lot of this stuff is hard to read. You actually got to piece together the lettering.
I wonder if you actually had the negative access, you could see it better.
Well, that's
Actually, you
the
know,
thing.
I was showing him on my phone, like a view on the phone, and that actually kind of brought through some of it. Like using the camera on my phone,
Yeah, the
I
negative
was
side.
able to dot to dot a little bit better. But this
No,
is what
I mean, this is somewhere. This data is somewhere.
Oh yeah, we have CDs and CDs of it, and we also have stacks of it that I can literally, all the documents are in central repository from the Jonestown Institute. They just have not been scanned in on. A lot of them illegible. If I need them scanned up, and there are people that want to work on this, we welcome the help. There's a whole group of us that are, working with the spare time. Obviously, with COVID, with a break in the COVID lull, we have a lot less time than we did while COVID was in full swing and everyone was basically just hiding out in the house. Again, I don't have children, so I could hide out in the house and focus on this, where, those of you that are parents would probably be focusing on your children, I would hope. But yeah, you can see these documents are very difficult in many cases to read, and some of them are damn near impossible. That's a letter of commendation, I believe. From
Yeah.
either, yeah,
Gerald Braun,
yeah. What department issued that one?
military airlift.
Okay, so that was the people that actually transported the bodies back, and sent in the shovels and all that. Dover Air Force Base is where the bodies ended up coming back from too. But yeah, you can see a lot of these documents are marked confidential. Some of them are marked, were marked basically restricted. Seeing a mark that says secret on it, people don't understand necessarily that the meaning of confidential, secret, classified, that there's an actual meaning to each of those terms. And so just because something's marked secret doesn't mean that, or
This is an actual
classified.
file where you can't even read it.
Yeah. It has different meanings. Like top secret means the information, if it's released to, into the public, will cause major damage to our country's or our country's reputation. Classified means maybe if it's released, maybe it will cause damage to our reputation or our country. Secret is released, it will cause damage to our reputation or our country. So, yeah, Siren, please ask again before Stephanie has to go to sleep. And Margie, you look a little tired.
No, I'm not. Well, I am. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm probably not gonna head right to bed, but yeah, I don't want to make this too long to where nobody wants to actually, rewatch or,
Right.
I think you're past that point, girl. This is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I'm pretty sure I am.
I
But
think you need to take this thing down,
put it on 2 times.
and I think you need to
through it,
go
guys.
through it very strategically and look at everything that's been said and then edit it properly. That's your
Probably.
best. I think that's exactly what needs to happen.
I agree.
Definitely, but it's definitely been good conversations and informative. I mean, it's still very convoluted to me.
Right.
You know what? And that is the thing. It's after so many years of researching it, it's still convoluted to me. We have to go by the facts. We have to look at how the cyanide was brought in. We have to look at all these different matters that that still make my head spin, wondering how people could do this.
Listen, you were telling me names of this person, and this person's related to that person, and that person's related to this. I said, "Oh, okay, yep, I'm done."
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. In the time of researching it, I've become, and right now the names are forgetting me because I used to remember everybody's name at Jonestown and who they were related to and who the kids were, and but it is too much to basically keep track of all the
I
information.
can't keep track of my own family members, let alone somebody else's.
Well, there's mine right there.
Yeah, it's a little backwards, huh? But yes, I really appreciate having you here tonight, and I appreciate Christola for modding. Since me and Jet's mom were kind of busy, although we didn't have very many in here to cause havoc, but I really appreciate everybody for coming, and I do believe Siren hopped off because he said he wanted to wipe off his makeup.
And I do know that there were a couple other people that didn't make any comments because I've gotten texts on my phone from them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're creating some viewers.
Well, I gotta help sisters out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate everybody for joining.
Maybe one condition, one thing I want to say before, it's just one thing.
Okay.
Next time, both of you. This is my now.
No.
My Margie now.
Margie.
You guys are gonna make a
nice.
list. Make a list, a topic list, and stick strategically to what you want to get across. Because I think this is there's a lot more information here.
Stephanie,
And
what did I say? You got to keep me on track. Didn't I say that?
Yes.
Did
And
he really?
I tried, but it's all such a it's all mind-boggling. You can't keep even me in line.
I'm throwing Stephanie under the bus. Well, this is the funniest. Because Stephanie's like, "Hey, I'm going live with Jason in 30 minutes," and I'm like, "Okay."
She's like, "Yeah, thanks for telling me."
And I'm like, "Hey, just be careful." But I'll read you my text message. This is my text message. It was like,
she said, "You just got to be careful and keep him in line because he likes to wander." I said, "Yep, he's already told me."
I was like, "Well, thanks for including me." I was like, "He loves to talk in circles. Keep on top of that." And but it's not that it's not that you're not full of knowledge. It's just hard when it's such a huge topic. This is a huge topic.
And I'm very stream of consciousness. I know.
What?
Yeah.
I'm very stream of consciousness.
Wake me up at like 6, will you?
Oh, wait. Who's man? There's no man in my house.
No, I said I'm very stream of consciousness.
That's mine. He wants me to wake him up at 6, and I'm like, yeah, if I'm gonna be up that late, but yeah, I'll set an alarm for it. Christella said, yeah, Jason gets off track and changes his mind in the middle of the stream.
You did have a couple of little changes of opinion right in the middle of everything.
Yeah,
you got to be. We're Libras.
Topic.
We got to look at it from different angles.
I am not a live stream Libra. I am invoking my inner Gemini, I think. I don't know.
Don't do it.
Does that mean?
I wouldn't do true crime shit if you like ever asked me to. No way.
Hey,
Look.
I'm a Scorpio rising sign girl.
Sorry. I'm just gonna leave that down there, okay?
You're fine. Hey, Jason, you did good though. I know you're.
Absolutely,
I know.
absolutely. It was very informative.
And thank you guys for letting
Yeah,
me come on and just kind of.
This is all new to me, so I'm trying, So thank you guys for keeping your patience and everything else. If questions come up, let me know. And
Put it in the comments.
as for you, Miss Melt, early October.
Okay, I'll get on that. I'll get on that. Yeah.
And don't forget, eat your own
Yes.
words.
What am I doing?
I've been working really hard. Eat your own words. All right, guys. I'm actually gonna end this one. I might go live on a separate one for a whole totally different off the topic stream. Just a little bit of BSing. Okay.
Have fun.
See ya.
Mwah. Take care, all.
Oh.
Bye.
See if I get there. There we go.